The sound of Eleanor Ashford's palm cracking across Naomi's face silenced 300 people mid-breath. Not gasps, not murmurs. Complete, suffocating silence. The kind that comes when everyone knows they're witnessing something that will detonate a life, maybe several lives, and there's no going back. Naomi's head snapped sideways. Her diamond earring caught the chandelier light as it swung against her jaw. The metallic taste of shock flooded her mouth. Or maybe that was blood from where her teeth had cut her inner cheek. 300 witnesses. 72 phone cameras already recording. $1 billion disintegrating in real time. And Naomi Stratton, 34-year-old CEO, self-made, black, brilliant, and exactly 3 signatures away from the deal that would save millions of lives, had 15 seconds to decide whether her dignity was worth more than everything she'd spent 12 years building. But wait, before we watch her decision destroy everything, let me say hello. Welcome, beautiful people. If you're new here, you just clicked into the wildest corporate revenge story you'll hear all year, and I'm so glad you're here. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. New York? London? Lagos? And listen, if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now because what happens in the next 15 seconds will have you screaming at your screen. Hit that button. I'll wait. Asterisk asterisk okay. Now back to that ballroom because Naomi's face is still burning, the cameras are still rolling, and the clock is ticking. The sting spread across Naomi's cheek like wildfire. Physical pain, yes, but nothing compared to the humiliation detonating in her chest. Eleanor Ashford stood 2 feet away, 70 years old and dripping in Chanel and contempt. Her hand still raised like she might strike again. "Don't you ever—" Eleanor hissed, her voice carrying that particular venom reserved for people who've never been told no. "Speak to me like we're equals." The words landed like a second slap. Naomi's vision tunneled. The crystal ballroom. All marble columns and crystal chandeliers and old money gleaming under soft light. Felt like it was collapsing inward. She could feel every eye on her. Could feel her carefully constructed armor cracking. Could feel 12 years of excellence, of proving herself, of being so good they couldn't ignore her, shattering like the champagne glass now sparkling in pieces at her feet. That glass had been in Eleanor's other hand 3 seconds ago. She'd thrown it when Naomi tried to correct her, tried to explain that no, she wasn't catering staff. She was the CEO about to sign the biggest pharmaceutical deal of the decade. Eleanor hadn't cared. Or worse, she'd cared exactly enough to make this public. To remind Naomi, in front of everyone who mattered, exactly what Eleanor thought she was worth. Adrian Wolfe materialized at Naomi's elbow, her lawyer, her friend, maybe something more if either of them ever had time to figure that out. His hand hovered near her arm, not quite touching, his whole body vibrating with barely restrained fury. "We're leaving," he said, his voice low and lethal. "Right now." But Naomi couldn't move, couldn't think past the roaring in her ears and the choice crystallizing in front of her with brutal clarity. Option 1 asterisk swallow this. Apologize for what? Existing? Being mistaken for the help at an event celebrating her billion-dollar deal? Take the contract waiting on the table 20 feet away, sign it with shaking hands and Eleanor's handprint blooming red across her brown skin, and walk out a billionaire who just bought her silence with her own company. The Ashford global merger would give her everything she'd worked for. Distribution infrastructure spanning 42 countries. Her cancer treatment, the one she'd built from nothing, the one that had consumed every waking hour since her mother died choking on medical debt, would reach patients within 6 months. 6 months. How many mothers would survive because she swallowed her pride tonight? Option 2 asterisk asterisk burn it all down. Walk away from the $1 billion. From the infrastructure, from the fastest path to saving lives. Walk away and take back the one thing Eleanor Ashford assumed she could steal. Naomi's dignity. 15 seconds. That's all the time she had before Adrian pulled her away, before the lawyers intervened, before the moment passed and the choice was made for her. Naomi's mind flashed to her mother, Dr. Patricia Stratton, brilliant researcher, dead at 47 because she couldn't afford the experimental cancer treatment she'd helped develop. Dead because people like the Ashfords decided her life wasn't worth the cost. Dead whispering, "Promise me you'll make them pay attention, baby. Not with anger, with excellence. Be so good they can't ignore you." Naomi had kept that promise. She'd been excellent. She'd been undeniable. And Eleanor Ashford had just slapped her in front of 300 people anyway. So what did excellence buy her exactly? The right to be assaulted in designer gowns instead of boardrooms. Asterisk asterisk, the cameras were still flashing. Someone in the crowd cleared their throat. Eleanor's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it had contained any warmth, any humanity. She was waiting for Naomi to fold, expecting it, had probably already written the narrative. Asterisk unfortunate misunderstanding. Tempers flared. But business is business, and the deal is what matters. Asterisk Naomi felt Adrian's hand finally touch her back. Gentle, grounding, giving her something solid to hold onto while her world tilted sideways. She felt her heart hammering against her ribs. She felt the weight of 12 years of work, of sacrifice, of sleeping 4 hours a night and living on coffee and determination. She felt her mother's voice. Be so good they can't ignore you. And she felt something else. Something burning and clarifying and absolute. Some prices are too high, even for saving the world. Asterisk asterisk Naomi straightened, lifted her chin. Let every camera capture the mark blooming across her cheek. Eleanor's rage immortalized on her skin. When she spoke, her voice didn't shake. Cut through the silence like a scalpel through flesh, clean, precise, deadly. This deal is over. For words. The end of everything. The beginning of war. Eleanor's face went white, then red. What did you just... The Ashford-Stratton merger is dead. Naomi's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. I don't do business with people who think they own me. Not for $1 billion. Not for anything. The ballroom erupted, voices overlapping, shock rippling through the crowd like a shockwave. Adrian's hand tightened on her back, steadying her, or maybe holding himself back from doing something that would get him disbarred. You can't do this. Eleanor's composure finally cracked. We have an agreement. We have a preliminary agreement. Non-binding. Your lawyers will confirm that, assuming you can still afford lawyers when this is over. Naomi turned, her Valentino gown swirling around her legs, her head high, her face still burning with Eleanor's violence. Enjoy your party, Mrs. Ashford. I hope it was worth $1 billion. She started walking toward the exit. She made it exactly 7 steps before the voice stopped her. Wait! Male. Desperate. Cutting through the chaos like a lifeline or a trap. Naomi couldn't tell which. Jonathan Ashford pushed through the crowd. His golden boy face pale with dawning horror. Il y en aurait son. The prince of the empire. The one person in the Ashford family who'd seemed almost human during negotiations. He clearly hadn't witnessed what his mother just did. But he was seeing it now, in the red mark on Naomi's face, in the shattered glass, in the phone cameras capturing his family's destruction in real time. Miss Stratton, please, Jonathan's voice cracked. What happened? I don't understand. Naomi looked at him. Really looked. Saw genuine confusion, genuine horror. Saw a man who might not be a monster, whose only crime was being born into a family of them. For half a second, she almost felt sorry for him. Then she remembered her mother dying in a hospital bed, drowning in debt, and the sympathy evaporated. Ask your mother, Naomi said quietly. Then louder, projecting so every camera would catch it. Ask her what she thinks gives her the right to put her hands on people she considers beneath her. Ask her if she remembers Dr. Patricia Stratton. And when you get your answers, Mr. Ashford, ask yourself if you really want to build your legacy on top of hers. She didn't wait for his response. Naomi Stratton walked out of the crystal ballroom with her head high, her billion-dollar deal in smoking ruins behind her, and absolutely no idea what happened next. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She just declared war on one of the most powerful families in America, and she was either about to change everything or lose everything. Probably both. Okay, now tell me you're not hooked. Drop a comment below. Did Naomi just make the biggest mistake of her life, or the bravest choice? Team take the money or team burn it down? And please tell me you hit that subscribe button, because what happens next involves corporate warfare, buried secrets, a mystery investor, and a romance that'll make your heart ache. Adrian caught Naomi before her knees gave out. Not in the lobby. She held it together, that long spine straight, heels clicking against marble like gunshots. But the moment the hotel doors closed behind them and the November air hit her face, something inside her collapsed. I've got you, Adrian murmured, his arm around her waist, holding her upright while valets pretended not to stare. Cars coming. 30 seconds. You can do 30 seconds. Naomi nodded, because speaking would crack her open, and she couldn't afford to break. Not here. Not where cameras might still catch her falling apart. The Blacktown car pulled up. Adrian guided her inside, slid in beside her, gave the driver her address without asking. He knew. After 12 years, he always knew. The door closed. Privacy glass up. City lights blurring past. Naomi shattered. Not crying, something worse. A full-body tremor that came from too much adrenaline and not enough air, and the sudden, crushing realization of what she'd just done. $1 billion, she whispered. Adrian, I just walked away from $1 billion and 6 months to global distribution. How many people die in 6 months? How many mothers? Stop. Adrian pulled her against his chest, his hand in her hair, anchoring her. Naomi, stop. You didn't kill anyone. Eleanor Ashford assaulted you in front of 300 witnesses. What happened in that ballroom is not your fault. But the patients will get the treatment. We'll find another way. We always find another way. His voice was fierce. You've built miracles from nothing before. You'll do it again. Naomi wanted to believe him, but all she could see was her mother. Patricia Stratton, 47 years old, brilliant biochemist, drowning in a hospital bed while cancer ate her alive because she couldn't afford the treatment that might have saved her. See, here's what you need to understand about Naomi Stratton. Every decision she'd made for 12 years had been haunted by her mother's death. Patricia had been extraordinary. Full scholarship to MIT, PhD in biochemical engineering by 25, research position at a pharmaceutical lab by 27. She was developing early-stage cancer treatment protocols when Naomi was born, groundbreaking work that should have made her famous, wealthy, untouchable. Instead, the company claimed ownership of her research, tied her up in legal battles she couldn't afford to fight. When she finally left, broken and furious, She'd signed NDAs that prevented her from even talking about her own discoveries. 10 years later, cancer found her. Stage 4 pancreatic. Aggressive. Deadly. The experimental treatment that might have helped, might have given her 6 more months, maybe a year, cost $340,000. Patricia's insurance wouldn't cover it. She had $14,000 in savings and a daughter in graduate school drowning in student loans. Naomi remembered every moment of those final 3 months. Her mother growing smaller, paler, the light dimming in her eyes, the hospital bills piling up, the collection calls, the impossible choices between pain medication and rent. She remembered her mother's last words, whispered with breath that rattled in her failing lungs. "Promise me you'll make them pay attention, baby." Not with anger. They expect anger from women who look like us. They dismiss anger. "Promise me you'll be so excellent, so undeniable. They have no choice but to see you. Change the system that killed me. Save the mothers who come after." Naomi had been 22, holding her mother's hand, drowning in grief and medical debt and rage that had nowhere to go. She'd made the promise, and she'd kept it like a religion. 7 years working 3 jobs while finishing her PhD. 4 years running clinical trials in a lab the size of a closet. 3 years pitching to investors who smiled and said things like, "Articulate and impressive for someone with your background," and "Are you sure you have the experience to run a company?" Adrian had been investor number 44. She'd pitched him in a coffee shop because she couldn't afford his office rates. He'd been a junior partner at a mid-tier firm, hungry and brilliant and willing to take equity instead of fees because he believed in her compound when nobody else would. "You're going to change the world," he'd told her that first day. Her business plan spread across a sticky table, her hope running on fumes. "I'm going to try," she'd answered. He'd smiled. "No, you're going to succeed. I've seen a lot of pitches, Naomi. Yours is different. You're not in this for money or fame. You're in this because you can't not be. That kind of purpose, that's what moves mountains." She'd fallen a little bit in love with him right then. Not romantically, not yet, but with the soul-deep recognition of finding someone who saw her. Really saw her. Over 12 years, Adrian had become her lawyer, her advisor, her best friend, her co-conspirator in building something impossible. He'd worked 100-hour weeks for equity and faith, celebrated every breakthrough, picked her up after every rejection, believed in her even when she couldn't believe in herself. And somewhere along the way, probably around year 7 when she'd gotten FDA approval and cried in his office for 20 minutes straight, best friend had become something deeper, something neither of them had time to examine because they were too busy building her dream. Until tonight, when he'd looked at her in that ballroom with Eleanor's handprint on her face and something in his eyes had finally said what his mouth wouldn't. "I love you, and watching someone hurt you is killing me." "Adrian," Naomi said now, pulling back to look at him. "If this doesn't work, if I can't find another deal, if the treatment gets delayed by years, then we delay it by years and you still did the right thing." His hands framed her face, gentle over the cheek that still burned. "Naomi, your mother told you to be excellent. She didn't tell you to let people brutalize you for the privilege of doing business with them. She told me to change the system. You can't change a system you're compromising yourself to join." Adrian's amber eyes were fierce. "You just proved that some things matter more than money. In front of 300 witnesses and however many million people are about to watch that video online. You just showed every young black woman watching that their dignity is non-negotiable. That's changing the system." Naomi's eyes burned. "When did you get so wise?" I've been taking notes from this brilliant CEO I know. She's stubborn as hell and scares me sometimes with how brave she is." His smile was soft. "Also, I've been in love with her for approximately 8 years, so I'm extremely motivated to make sure she doesn't regret choosing integrity over money." The confession hung between them. Finally said, finally real. 8 years. Naomi's voice cracked. "Adrian, why didn't you?" "Because you were building something extraordinary and you didn't need your lawyer complicating things." He brushed a thumb across her cheek. "But Naomi, watching you walk away from that deal tonight, walking away from everything to keep your soul intact, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I'm done pretending I don't love you." Naomi kissed him. It was soft and desperate and tasted like salt from tears she hadn't realized she was crying. When they broke apart, Adrian was smiling. "So," he said, "we're doing this? Burning down the Ashfords and falling in love and probably making a lot of terrible decisions." "Those sound like excellent decisions to me," Naomi whispered. "Good." He kissed her forehead. "Then let's get started. Because I guarantee you Eleanor Ashford is not going to take this quietly, and we need to be ready for whatever comes next." He had no idea how right he was. Naomi's phone had been buzzing nonstop since they left the hotel. She finally looked at it. 47 missed calls, 216 text messages, and one email that made her blood freeze. From V. Corleone at Chemitech SG. Subject: "We should talk." Message: "Ms. Stratton, I believe we have mutual interests regarding the Ashford family. I have information about your mother's death that you need to see. Meet me tomorrow. Come prepared for the truth to be worse than you imagined." Violet Corleone ***. Naomi stared at the screen until the words blurred. "What is it?" Adrian asked. She showed him. He read it twice. Could be a trap. Could be a scam. Could be real. Naomi finished. "Adrian, what if my mother's death wasn't just corporate greed? What if it was something worse?" And just like that, walking away from the Ashford deal stopped being the end of the story and started being the beginning of something much, much darker. What do you think Violet knows? Drop your theories in the comments. And if you're not subscribed yet, please hit that button because this story is about to get wild and you don't want to miss what happens when Naomi discovers the truth about her mother's death. The video hit Twitter at 11:47 p.m. Naomi was still in the car with Adrian when her phone exploded with notifications. Someone had uploaded the footage, crystal clear, perfectly angled, capturing every devastating second. Eleanor's hand connecting with Naomi's face. The champagne glass shattering. Naomi's forward execution of a billion-dollar deal. "It's everywhere," Adrian muttered, scrolling through his own phone. Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Wait, LinkedIn? Who posts assault videos on LinkedIn? How many views? Naomi asked. 200,000 and climbing. Fast. He looked up. "Naomi, you're about to be the most famous CEO in America. For better or worse." Worse arrived at 6:32 a.m. Naomi woke to 17 missed calls from her board of directors, 43 interview requests, and a lawsuit notification that made her want to throw her phone into the Potomac. Eleanor Ashford was suing her for breach of contract, defamation, and intentional interference with business relations. The suit claimed Naomi had fabricated the assault to escape a legitimate business agreement, that she'd staged the entire confrontation for publicity, and that her reckless accusations had cost Ashford global irreparable harm. The dollar amount demanded $1.2 billion. "She's trying to bury you," Adrian said when Naomi called him. her hands shaking too hard to hold the coffee cup. This is intimidation. None of these charges will stick. Can we afford to fight it? Silence. They both knew the answer. Stratton Biotech was successful but not wealthy. A prolonged legal battle against the Ashford legal machine would drain resources, delay FDA approvals, potentially destroy everything she'd built. We fight, Adrian said finally, and we meet with Violet Corleone today. If she has information about your mother, we need it now. The meeting happened in a private room at the Mandarin Oriental. Violet Corleone was 70-something, silver-haired, and radiated the kind of power that came from decades of winning battles most people didn't know were being fought. Ms. Stratton, thank you for coming. Violet gestured to a chair. I'll be direct. Your mother didn't just work for an Ashford subsidiary. She was a lead researcher on a project that would have revolutionized cancer treatment 20 years ago. Eleanor Ashford personally ordered the project killed, the research buried, and your mother destroyed professionally. Naomi's vision tunneled. You have proof. Violet slid a folder across the table. Emails, internal memos, financial records showing Eleanor paid off the patent office to transfer your mother's work to Ashford ownership. Your mother fought back, so Eleanor had her blacklisted from every major pharmaceutical company in the country. Patricia Stratton couldn't get hired anywhere. That's why she had no insurance when cancer found her. That's why she died. The words landed like bullets. Eleanor didn't just steal from your mother, Violet continued. She murdered her. Slowly. Legally. And she's done it to 62 other researchers since then. Naomi looked at Adrian, saw her own rage reflected in his eyes. What do you want? She asked Violet. I want to help you destroy her, and I want you to partner with Chun Medical instead of the Ashfords. We'll give you better terms, faster distribution, and the resources to make sure Eleanor Ashford spends the rest of her life in prison. Naomi's hands were steady when she reached across the table. Let's burn it all down. The video went viral in 43 minutes. Naomi watched it happen in real time from her apartment, still in the Valentino gown, makeup smeared, Adrian on her couch refreshing news sites while they waited for the world to catch fire. The footage was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, the evening news. Someone had captured it all in perfect high definition. Eleanor's hand connecting with Naomi's face, the champagne glass exploding against marble, Naomi's devastating forward response, and the chaos that followed. By midnight, hashtags were trending worldwide. Hashtag Ashford Slap. Hashtag Naomi Stratton. Hashtag $1 billion dignity. By 2 a.m., think pieces were being published. The cost of integrity in corporate America. When black excellence still isn't enough. The CEO who chose dignity over dollars. By 6 a.m., Naomi's phone was ringing off the hook. Her board of directors wanted an emergency meeting. News outlets wanted interviews. Investors were panicking. Her assistant had forwarded 63 interview requests and counting. And then the email arrived that changed everything. It came at 6:47 a.m., just as weak November sunlight was bleeding through Naomi's windows and Adrian was making coffee in her kitchen, like he'd been doing it for years instead of this being the first morning after everything changed. The subject line was simple. About Patricia Stratton. The sender, V. Corleone at Chemetech, SG. Naomi's hand trembled as she opened it. Ms. Stratton, my name is Violet Corleone. You don't know me, but I knew your mother. I was on the board of directors at Ashford Pharmaceuticals 20 years ago when Eleanor Ashford destroyed Patricia's career and stole her research. I have evidence. Documents that prove your mother's death wasn't just tragedy. It was murder by corporate greed and legal brutality. Meet me today. 2 p.m. Mandarin Oriental, Private Dining Room 7. Come alone or bring your lawyer, your choice. But come prepared to learn that everything you think you know about the Ashfords is just the surface. The rot goes deeper than you imagine. And you, Miss Stratton, just became the only person with the platform and the public support to expose it all. Last night, you chose dignity. Today, I'm offering you justice. V. Corleone. Adrian was reading over her shoulder before she realized he'd crossed the room. That's either the answer to our prayers or the most elaborate trap I've ever seen, he said carefully. Corleone. Chun Medical Technologies. Naomi's mind was already racing, connecting dots. That's the Singapore group that's been trying to get a meeting for 6 months. The ones who offered to partner instead of buy us out. And now suddenly they have information about your mother? Right after you blow up the Ashford deal. Adrian's lawyer instincts were firing on all cylinders. Naomi, this could be real, she interrupted. It could be real, Adrian. What if my mother's death wasn't just bad luck and corporate greed? What if Eleanor Ashford deliberately destroyed her? Then we need to know everything before we walk into that meeting. Adrian was already on his laptop. Give me 2 hours to dig into Violet Corleone and Chun Medical. We don't make any moves until we know who we're dealing with. But they didn't get 2 hours. At 7:15 a.m., Naomi's assistant called. Ms. Stratton, I'm so sorry to bother you, but there's someone here. He showed up 20 minutes ago and won't leave. He says it's urgent. Who is it? Pause. Jonathan Ashford. Naomi and Adrian exchanged looks. I'm coming in, Naomi said. Naomi, you don't owe him anything? Adrian started. But she was already moving, stripping off the gown she'd been too exhausted to change out of, pulling on jeans and a sweater. He wasn't there last night, she said. He didn't see what his mother did until after. Maybe he's here to threaten you, or bribe you, or do damage control for Eleanor. Adrian was pulling on his jacket, his protective instincts in overdrive. We go together, and we record everything. Jonathan Ashford was wading in. Stratton Biotech's lobby looking like he'd been awake for days. His suit was rumpled, which for someone born into billions probably qualified as a mental breakdown. His hair was disheveled. His eyes were red-rimmed and haunted. He stood when Naomi entered, Adrian a half-step behind her like a well-dressed guard dog. Ms. Stratton, thank you for seeing me. I know you have no reason to. His voice cracked. I didn't know. I swear to God. I didn't know what she did until I saw the video. What do you want, Mr. Ashford? Naomi's voice was ice. To apologize. To give you this. He pulled out a flash drive with shaking hands. And to tell you that my mother is a monster, and I'm done protecting her. Naomi stared at the flash drive like it might explode. What's on it? Everything I could find in her private files, including documents about a researcher named Patricia Stratton. Jonathan's eyes met hers, and the pain in them looked genuine. Your mother worked for us, didn't she? 20 years ago. The floor tilted. How did you? I went through my mother's office after the video went viral. I needed to understand how someone I thought I knew could do something so vile. And I found. He gestured helplessly at the flash drive. Files, emails, legal documents. Ms. Stratton, I think my family stole your mother's research. I think they destroyed her career. And I think that's why my mother reacted the way she did last night. She knew exactly who you were. The silence in the lobby was deafening. Adrian moved first, stepping between them. Why are you telling us this? Because it's the truth. Because what my family did to Patricia Stratton, to dozens of other researchers, it's unconscionable. Jonathan's hands were trembling. And because I've spent 6 months in negotiations falling in love with the way Naomi's mind works, watching her dedication to saving lives, and I'll be damned if I let my family's sins destroy someone that brilliant. The confession hung in the air, raw, unexpected, complicated. You don't know me, Naomi said quietly. I know you spent 12 years building something extraordinary. I know you walked away from $1 billion rather than compromise your integrity. I know you're trying to save lives while my family has been ending them for profit. Jonathan's voice was steady now, determined. I know that's the kind of person worth fighting for, even if it means burning down my own family. This could be a trap, Adrian said. Corporate espionage. You give us that drive, we use it, then you claim we stole confidential information. I don't care what you think of me, Jonathan interrupted, looking only at Naomi. Use it. Don't use it. Destroy me along with my mother if that's what it takes. But please at least look at what's on here. Your mother deserves the truth. And so do you. He set the flash drive on the reception desk and walked toward the exit. Mr. Ashford, Naomi called. He stopped, turned. Why now? You could have stayed silent, kept your inheritance, your family's empire. Because some things matter more than money, Jonathan said, echoing her words from the ballroom. You taught me that last night. Then he was gone. Naomi picked up the flash drive with numb fingers. We're not opening that until we've had it checked for malware, Adrian said immediately. And we're definitely not trusting Golden Boy's sudden attack of conscience. He knew about my mother, Adrian. How would he know unless it's all connected? Unless Eleanor has been playing a longer game than we realized. Adrian pulled out his phone. I'm moving up the meeting with Violet Corleone. If she has information and Jonathan has information, we need to see both and figure out what the hell is actually going on. 2 hours later, Naomi sat across from Violet Corleone in a private dining room at the Mandarin Oriental, both flash drives on the table between them, and her entire understanding of her mother's death about to shatter into something so much worse than she'd ever imagined. Violet Corleone looked like money and vengeance had a baby. 70-something, silver bob, designer suit, and eyes that had seen empires rise and fall and knew exactly which pillars to kick out to make them crumble. Ms. Stratton, Mr. Wolfe, thank you for coming. Violet gestured to the spread of documents already laid out. I'm going to tell you a story about corporate murder, and then we're going to discuss how to make sure Eleanor Ashford pays for every single life she's destroyed. She slid a photograph across the table. Patricia Stratton, young and vibrant, standing in a lab coat beside research equipment, her smile bright with the kind of hope that came from believing your work mattered. Your mother was brilliant, Violet began. She developed a cancer treatment protocol that would have saved thousands of lives and cost a fraction of existing therapies. Eleanor Ashford saw it as a threat to more profitable treatments Ashford Pharma was developing. So she did what she always does. She destroyed it. Document after document painted the picture. Eleanor claiming Patricia's research as company property. Legal battles Patricia couldn't afford. Blacklisting that prevented her from getting hired anywhere in the industry. A systematic, deliberate destruction that left Patricia broke, unemployed, and uninsured when cancer found her. Your mother didn't just die of cancer, Ms. Stratton. She died because Eleanor Ashford decided her research was worth more dead than alive. Violet's voice was cold steel, and Patricia was victim number 47. There have been 63 more since. Naomi couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the rage building in her chest like a living thing. "Why are you telling me this now?" she managed. "Because my NDA expires in 6 days. Because you just became a folk hero for standing up to Eleanor. Because public sentiment is on your side and the Ashfords are vulnerable." Violet leaned forward. "And because I've spent 20 years gathering evidence to destroy that family, and you're the catalyst I've been waiting for. What do you want? Partner with Chun Medical instead of the Ashfords. We'll give you better terms, faster global distribution, and the resources to expose every crime Eleanor has committed." Violet's smile was sharp as broken glass. "You get justice for your mother and your treatment goes worldwide. I get to watch Eleanor Ashford's empire burn. Everyone wins. Except the Ashfords." Adrian was already shaking his head. "This is revenge, not business." "This is both," Violet interrupted. "And it's the only way Naomi gets what she actually wants. Her treatment saving lives and the people who killed her mother held accountable." Naomi looked at the photographs of her mother, at the documents proving systematic murder by corporate greed, at the choice crystallizing in front of her. Partner with Violet and potentially become part of someone else's vendetta. Or walk away again and watch Eleanor escape justice. "I need to see Jonathan's drive," she said. When they plugged it in, the files told the same story Violet had, but with one additional detail that made Naomi's blood freeze. A memo, dated 3 weeks ago, from Eleanor to her legal team. "Naomi Stratton must be neutralized before she makes the connection to her mother. If the merger proceeds as planned, ensure all references to the Stratton matter are destroyed during integration. If she becomes a problem beforehand, alternative measures may be necessary." Alternative measures. "She was going to destroy me either way," Naomi whispered. "The merger was just the cleanest option. And when you walked away, you became a threat instead of an asset." Adrian's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "Naomi, she's not going to stop. The lawsuit is just the beginning." Naomi looked at Violet. "If I partner with Chun Medical, can you protect my company during the legal fight?" "I can do better than that. I can help you take everything Eleanor has and burn it to the ground." Violet's smile was terrifying. "But I need you all in. No half measures. We destroy the Ashfords completely, or we don't start this war at all." Naomi thought about her mother, about 62 other victims, about every life that could be saved if she stopped playing defense and went on the attack. She extended her hand across the table. "Let's finish them." The partnership with Chun Medical was finalized in 72 hours. Record time for a deal that would normally take months. Violet Corleone moved like a woman who'd been preparing for war and finally got the enemy in her crosshairs. But Eleanor Ashford wasn't going down quietly. The first counterstrike came on a Wednesday. Naomi arrived at her office to find FDA investigators waiting with a warrant to audit all of her clinical trial data. Someone had filed an anonymous complaint alleging research fraud. "This is Eleanor," Adrian said, pacing her office while investigators combed through files. "She's trying to delay your FDA approval, tank your credibility." "Can she?" Naomi asked, watching her life's work get dissected by strangers. "Not if your research is clean, which it is." Adrian stopped pacing, faced her. "But the investigation alone could take months. And in the court of public opinion." He didn't need to finish. Naomi understood. The narrative was already shifting. Eleanor's PR team was flooding media with their own story. Scorned CEO fabricates assault to escape legitimate business deal, then partners with competitor out of spite. Some people were buying it. The second strike was more personal. Someone leaked Naomi's financial records. Student loans she was still paying off, the medical debt from her mother's death. Every struggle documented and spun as evidence she'd been desperate enough to stage the whole thing for a better deal. "They're trying to destroy you," Violet said during their strategy session. "Make you look like a con artist who manipulated public sympathy." "Let them try," Naomi said, but her hands shook when she said it. That night, Adrian found her in her office at midnight, staring at hate mail that had started arriving by the hundreds. "You should go home," he said softly. "I can't sleep anyway." Naomi gestured at her computer. "Might as well work." Adrian crossed the room, gently closed her laptop, and pulled her to her feet. "Then don't work. Just be human for 5 minutes. With me." He held her while she finally broke. Not crying, just shaking with exhaustion and fear and the crushing weight of fighting a war on 12 different fronts. "I'm scared," she whispered against his chest. "What if I can't win this? What if I've destroyed everything for nothing?" "Then we lose together," Adrian said, "and we rebuild together." "But Naomi, you're not going to lose. Eleanor is desperate, which means she's scared. Scared people make mistakes." He was right about that part. Eleanor's mistake arrived the next morning in the form of Jonathan Ashford, showing up at Stratton Biotech with a black eye and information that would crack the case wide open. "She tried to have me declared mentally incompetent," Jonathan said, his voice hollow. "My own mother. She's filing papers to have me committed, claiming I had a breakdown, that everything I gave you was stolen during a psychotic episode." Naomi stared at him. "Can she do that? With the right doctors and the right lawyers?" "Maybe." Jonathan handed her another flash drive. "But not before I copied everything else. Bank records, offshore accounts, proof she's been embezzling from Ashford Global for a decade." "Why are you doing this?" Naomi asked. "You're destroying your entire life." Jonathan's damaged eyes met hers. "Because my entire life was built on other people's suffering. I'd rather have nothing and be able to look at myself in the mirror." Adrian was watching them both, something complicated crossing his face. And Naomi realized that this war was about to get even more dangerous, because now Eleanor wasn't just fighting to protect her empire. She was fighting for her survival, and cornered animals were the most vicious kind. The truth came out during a midnight meeting in Violet's hotel suite, with documents spread across every surface and too much coffee fueling their exhaustion. Jonathan's newest flash drive contained Ashford Global's financial records going back 25 years. Adrian had been combing through them for hours when he suddenly went still. "Oh my God," he whispered. Naomi looked up from the patent theft files. "What?" Patricia Stratton received payments from Ashford Global. Monthly deposits. For 15 years. Adrian's face was pale. "Naomi, your mother was on their payroll until the month she died." The room tilted. "That's impossible. She couldn't get hired anywhere after Eleanor blacklisted her." "These aren't salary payments. They're marked as confidential settlement. Ongoing compliance." Adrian turned the laptop toward her. "Naomi, I think your mother signed an NDA. I think Eleanor paid her to stay silent about the stolen research." Naomi stared at the numbers. $1,500 a month. Every month. Just enough to survive but never enough to thrive. "She took hush money," Naomi said numbly. All those years she was taking their money. She was surviving. Violet interrupted sharply. Eleanor made sure Patricia couldn't work anywhere else. She had a daughter to raise. What choice did she have? She had a choice not to take money from the people who destroyed her. Naomi's voice cracked. She told me to fight them, to change the system, and the whole time she was keeping you fed and housed, Jonathan said quietly. I found the correspondence. Eleanor threatened to sue Patricia into complete bankruptcy if she ever spoke about the research. The settlement was Patricia's only option to keep you both off the streets. The betrayal burned worse than Eleanor's slap. Her mother, her brilliant, principled mother, had spent 15 years taking payments from her own destroyers, had died on their payroll. The experimental treatment, Naomi whispered, the one that cost $340,000. How much did Eleanor pay her over 15 years? Adrian did the math. $270,000. Just short. Deliberately, cruelly short. Eleanor kept her on a leash, Violet said. Paid her just enough to survive but never enough to escape. And when Patricia got sick, she probably begged Eleanor for help, for the money that might save her life. And Eleanor said no. Naomi finished. Let her die knowing she'd spent 15 years taking their money for nothing. The rage that filled her was cold and clarifying and absolute. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Stop the investigation or I release everything about Patricia's payments. The world will know your mother was bought and paid for. Your choice. A. Eleanor was threatening to destroy Patricia's reputation, to turn her mother's desperate survival into proof of corruption. She thinks this will stop me, Naomi said softly. Will it? Violet asked. Naomi looked at the documents, at her mother's name beside those payments, at 15 years of quiet suffering transformed into a weapon. Then she looked at Adrian, at the man who'd stood beside her for 12 years, who loved her enough to tell her hard truths. No, Naomi said. It's going to make me finish her. She kissed Adrian then, fierce and desperate, pouring 12 years of almost into one moment of absolute certainty. When they broke apart, his eyes were blazing. Then let's burn it all down, he said. Eleanor had just made her fatal mistake. She'd shown Naomi exactly how deep her cruelty went. Now Naomi would show her what happened when you turned survival into a weapon against the daughter who'd spent 12 years becoming unstoppable. Eleanor's retaliation was surgical and devastating. The story broke on every major news outlet simultaneously. CEO's mother took payoffs from companies she claimed destroyed her. Patricia's settlement payments were everywhere, spun as proof that the Stratton family had been scamming Ashford Global for decades. Naomi's board called an emergency meeting. 3 directors resigned immediately. Investors started pulling out. The FDA investigation intensified. But the worst came when Adrian was arrested. The charges: extortion, conspiracy to commit fraud, and theft of confidential corporate information. Eleanor claimed he'd orchestrated everything, seduced Naomi into the partnership, manipulated her grief over her mother, stolen Ashford files through Jonathan. It's all fabricated, Jonathan said desperately as they stood outside the courthouse. I'll testify that I gave you everything willingly. Your mother's lawyers are claiming you're mentally incompetent, Naomi said hollowly. Your testimony won't help. She watched Adrian being led away in handcuffs, his eyes finding hers across the chaos, mouthing, "Don't stop fighting." But Naomi was drowning. Her company was hemorrhaging money on legal fees. Her mother's reputation was destroyed. The man she loved was in jail. And her cancer treatment, the whole reason for any of this, was indefinitely delayed while the FDA investigated fraud allegations. That night, Eleanor's lawyer called with an offer. Drop everything. Public apology. Admit the assault was a misunderstanding. Sign a comprehensive NDA. In exchange, we drop all charges against Mr. Wolf. The FDA investigation ends, and you receive $20 million to walk away quietly. And my treatment? Ashford Global will acquire the patent. We'll handle distribution. The same deal that had started this nightmare. Except now Naomi had nothing left to lose but Adrian's freedom. She had 24 hours to decide. Save the man she loved, or keep fighting a war that was destroying everything. For the first time since the slap, Naomi considered surrendering. Naomi sat in her office at 3 a.m., Eleanor's offer on her desk, staring at the choice that would define everything. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. Don't take the deal. Adrian's voice, calling from jail. Naomi, whatever she offered, don't. She'll destroy you. I don't care. I will not be the reason you surrender. His voice was fierce. We're close. I can feel it. Eleanor is desperate, which means she's vulnerable. Promise me you won't stop. Adrian, I can't lose you. You won't. Trust me. Just hold on a little longer. The call disconnected. Naomi sat there, torn between love and justice, until her email chimed. Subject: You're not alone. Attached were statements from 143 patients, every person her treatment had saved in clinical trials. They were going public with their stories, offering to testify, creating a media firestorm about the real cost of delaying her FDA approval. Then Violet called. 3 more Ashford victims just came forward with evidence. We have her on 6 additional fraud cases. Then Jonathan appeared at her door. I found the smoking gun. Proof Eleanor bribed the FDA investigator who's auditing you. It's over, we can expose everything. Finally, her assistant forwarded a news alert. Ashford Global stock plummets as investors demand answers about fraud allegations. Eleanor's empire was cracking. Naomi looked at the offer letter, at Eleanor's attempt to buy her silence one final time. Then she called Eleanor's lawyer. Tell Mrs. Ashford I decline. Tell her I'm coming for everything she's built. And tell her my mother's 27 years of payments are about to become evidence of racketeering, not hush money. She hung up and called Violet. Let's finish this. Tomorrow. I want federal prosecutors, every piece of evidence, and Eleanor Ashford in handcuffs by week's end. Now you sound like Patricia's daughter, Violet said with satisfaction. The darkest hour was over. Dawn was coming, and it would burn. The FBI raid on Ashford Global happened at dawn. Naomi watched from across the street as federal agents swarmed the building, carrying out boxes of evidence. News helicopters circled overhead. Cameras captured everything. Eleanor Ashford emerged in handcuffs, her Chanel suit perfect, her face twisted with rage that would be replayed on every news channel for weeks. The charges: racketeering, fraud, embezzlement, bribery of federal officials, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and criminal deprivation of civil rights in 63 cases of patent theft spanning 2 decades. Adrian was released within the hour. All charges dropped. He found Naomi outside the FBI field office, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her like they'd been separated for years instead of 3 days. It's over, he whispered against her hair. Not yet, Naomi said. The final revelation came during Eleanor's arraignment. Jonathan testified, presenting evidence that shattered what was left of the Ashford Empire. Eleanor had murdered someone. Not metaphorically, actually murdered. A researcher named David Chun, Violet's husband, who'd threatened to expose the patent theft scheme 23 years ago. His death had been ruled a suicide. Jonathan's evidence proved it was staged. Violet sat in the courtroom gallery, tears streaming down her face as her husband's name was finally cleared. Eleanor was denied bail. Flight risk, the judge said. Danger to witnesses. As she was led away, Eleanor's eyes found Naomi's one last time. No superiority now. No contempt. Just the dawning realization that she'd been destroyed by the daughter of a woman she'd tried to erase. "My mother says hello," Naomi said quietly. That night, the FDA cleared Stratton Biotech of all fraud allegations. The treatment was approved for expedited global distribution. Naomi stood in her office, looking at her mother's photograph, and finally let herself believe it. They'd won. Justice had come, and her mother's dream would save millions. 6 months later, Naomi stood in a hospital in Johannesburg, watching a mother hold her daughter who'd just received the treatment that had saved her life. The Stratton Partnership had distributed her therapy to 47 countries. Survival rates were exceeding every projection. Lives were being saved every single day. Eleanor Ashford was serving 26 years in federal prison. Ashford Global had been dissolved, its assets liquidated to compensate victims. Jonathan had testified at every trial, then quietly disappeared to rebuild his life away from his family's legacy. Violet had become Naomi's mentor and friend, channeling her grief into ensuring no researcher would ever be destroyed the way her husband and Patricia had been. And Adrian, "There you are," he said, finding her in the hospital corridor. "Ready." They were married in a small ceremony overlooking Cape Town, surrounded by patients whose lives Naomi had saved and friends who'd fought beside her. Violet officiated. Jonathan sent flowers and a note. "Thank you for showing me what integrity looks like." During her vows, Naomi looked at Adrian, the man who'd believed in her when she had nothing, who'd stood beside her through everything, and promised him 50 more years of building miracles together. "Your mother would be so proud," he whispered after they kissed. "She knows," Naomi said, looking up at the sky. A week later, she received the Nobel Prize nomination. A year after that, she was on the cover of Time magazine, the CEO who changed everything. But the moment that mattered most came when a young black girl approached her after a speaking engagement and said, "I watched the video of you at that gala. You taught me my dignity isn't for sale. Thank you." Naomi knelt down, looked her in the eyes. "Never forget that. Be so excellent they can't ignore you. But never let them diminish you." The girl nodded, eyes shining. And Naomi knew, finally, completely, that every sacrifice had been worth it. She'd kept her promise to her mother. She'd changed the world. What did you think of this journey? Drop a comment below and tell me your favorite moment. And if this story moved you, subscribe for more stories about dignity, justice, and the power of refusing to be diminished. See you in the next one.